I wanted to let you know that we are recording this chat in its entirety. So if you have to hop off early or if you miss anything, no worries. We will send you the recording along with any slides that we show here today via an email that you'll receive within the next week. Also, we want this chat to be as interactive as possible. Many of you submitted questions when you registered, and we thank you for that. We'll start with those. But if you have any questions at any time during the chat, feel free to submit those, and we'll do our best to answer them on air. And with that, Bob, I'm going to have you start off by giving you an introduction.
Yeah, sure, Nicole. My name is Bob Knight. I'm Associate Director of the Career Management Center. I've been here at Emory for 6 years as a career coach, and I have 30 years of corporate experience, most of that in consumer products and high tech with companies like Cisco, General Electric, and Georgia Pacific.
Thank you. Justin?
My name is Justin Hamlet. I attended the Weekend Executive Program, just graduated last May. And I will be starting with Tata Consultancy Services and their Enterprise Application Solutions Group next month.
Ed?
Hey everybody, my name is Edward Dearborn. I'm a graduate, 2016 graduate from the Modular Executive MBA program. I'm an Air Force veteran, spent some time in the airline space and currently work as a Director of Planning and Corporate Strategy for Intercontinental Hotels Group here in Atlanta.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us here today. We're going to go ahead and kick off with an easy one for you, Bob. Can you talk a little bit about the types of career services that we offer our Executive MBA students?
Sure. You know, Nicole, when I talk to students and ask them, why are you pursuing your MBA, I'll get a unanimous answer. And that answer is, well, I want to advance my career. And whether you're looking to advance your career with your current company or whether you're looking at possibly making a change at some point down the road, what I've found with working with students is that career management is actually a leadership behavior. That if you are not proactively and aggressively and consistently taking the actions you need to advance your career, it's probably not happening and it probably won't happen. Now, the good news is here at Goizueta, we have a number of support organizations that can help you with that career management. Obviously, first and foremost, it's the Career Management Center. We'll talk about that at length during this web chat. But we also have other organizations and people. We have a very engaged faculty group that are very willing to meet with students, to give students advice on advancing their career and moving their career forward, also on making their networks available to students, which is just as important. We also have a number of affinity groups and clubs, such as the Goizueta Consulting Association, the Finance Club, the Marketing Club, that are available to students to really build their functional skills and, again, build their networks. And career services really doesn't end once you graduate from Goizueta, because we have our sister organization is Alumni Career Services, and they continue to offer many of the same resources, tools, and support that we do with the Career Management Center.
So Bob, a question that we get often from our alumni or folks who are about to graduate is, what happens after graduation? Do I still have access to the Career Management Center? Who do I go to when I need help?
Well, most students have, while they're at Goizueta, have built relationships with coaches within the Career Management Center, and of course, we want to leverage those relationships formally. The Career Management Center will continue to support you for 90 days after graduation. At that point, formally, you are transferred to Alumni Career Services. And like I said, they have the similar tools and resources that we do at the CMC. Doesn't mean at that 90 days that for students that I'm working with, like Justin and Ed, I'm not going to answer the phone, I'm not going to return their emails. But generally, that's a transition point as we bring in new classes for the CMC. The existing classes move over to Alumni Career Services.
All right, so I think that's a nice distinction, that we do offer lifetime career services, but the focus might shift from the Career Management Center over to our Alumni Relations Group that also has the same tools and resources and expertise.
Correct.
Perfect. Ed and Justin, you guys went through the program. You obviously leveraged the Career Management Center resources. Could you talk a little bit about your experiences and your interactions with the Career Management Center?
Sure.
Okay.
So as I was saying, I started in 2016 and just graduated last May. And I was looking possibly for a transition or a pivot into another industry or function. And really, the first week of school and the curriculum, the CMC team, Bob and his other colleagues will come and talk to each of us in the class and really get a understanding of where my classmates and I wanted to really pursue our careers. Some of them wanted to do a lateral or move up in their organization. Some wanted to move into other organizations in the same function, or into, for myself, into a different industry. So knowing that, I started with Bob really early in the process. It was actually the second week of school. And really building that relationship, as Bob talked to, is really important, because he gets to know you, you get to know him, as well as your classmates, because I was able to leverage my classmates knowing a little bit about IT consulting, so I could really put things together about my experience as well as what I wanted to do.
Very helpful. Ed, you want to elaborate on your experiences?
Yeah, I guess when I think about myself, if I were to describe what my career brand was before coming to Goizueta, I was a sole contributor, very much a subject matter expert, and that definitely informed my choice to say, look, I want to get earn an MBA, and I want to go to a school to help me move from being a subject matter expert to a leader. And part of that, so thinking about, okay, now I'm going to select a school that's going to help me accomplish that. Really, the second component was, how do I begin to broaden my opportunities? I was a subject matter expert in the airline space. Well, that's great. Airlines are, there's a lot of jobs there. But how do I really open that aperture way up? And as Justin mentioned, look at other career sectors. So that was part of coming into Goizueta. It's how, and I think this is where CMC did a great job for me, is really to start to say, how do I articulate? I mean, great to say there's all this world of all these possible areas to go into, but how do I begin to, in a structured framework, begin to work through the steps to say, yep, there's all these possibilities out here, but here are the ones that I think will leverage my skills best, that might meet my geographic needs and some of those kind of things. And again, as Justin mentioned, the CMC gets engaged immediately and begin to lay out what those tools are almost at day one. Okay, if it's not day one, it's day two, and start to say, here are all the tools, and to begin to walk side by side with the students as I learned how to use those tools, things like networking and some of the other things that you mentioned.
That's great. Bob, both Justin and Ed talked about how the CMC reaches out, that you go into the classroom from maybe not day one, maybe it's week one, maybe it is day one, to really engage them. Can you talk a little bit about how students actually access you guys?
Yeah, sure. The CMC generally operates on an appointment basis. We have appointments available. All the coaches have appointment schedules available Monday through Friday during the day and the early evening. We also work on selected Saturdays. These appointments can be either on campus while they're here in an MBA program, either on a weekend or a modular program during the week. They can be on campus or they can be virtual. And by virtual appointments, I'm referring to either phone or Skype-related appointments. And what we try to do is be here when the students are here, and even be here when they're not, to give students the widest availability to our services. We also, several times a year, will offer off-site appointments, and those appointments are typically in Midtown, in North Atlanta, in Northeast Atlanta, where we're available to meet students, say at a Starbucks or a restaurant. And this is convenient for many students because they work in these areas and they don't have to actually travel to campus if they want a face-to-face appointment.
So you're talking about these appointments, and these appointments are with the students and their career coaches, right? So let's talk a little bit more about that. I mean, two of the biggest benefits of our Career Management Center is the personal career coaches that students have. So let's define that for our audience. What is a career coach? And then the second benefit is all the programming that the CMC offers to students. So can you touch on those 2 points?
Yeah, sure. Well, the overall goal of the Career Management Center and the team of career coaches that support the students is really to partner with students and make sure that students have the resources, the tools, and information they need to manage their career. And that's while they're at Goizueta, and as I said earlier, after they leave. And that support really encompasses three areas. It's content, coaching, and connections. And content refers to really professional skills training. And this is training that really begins at orientation, like Ed and Justin were talking about. During orientation, our EMBA students get an introduction to career planning, which is really an introduction to the process of career planning. Generally following that, we have programs in personal brand, or developing personal brand. And personal brand is really who you are professionally and what differentiates you in your company, in your function, and in your industry. We also have programs in LinkedIn and networking. It's been my experience that most MBA jobs are found either directly or indirectly through networking. So that's really a critical skill set and foundation to develop while students are here at Goizueta. And we spend a lot of time helping them to develop the networking skills and networking strategy and how to use LinkedIn to really drive their networking forward. And of course, we offer other programs for those students who are looking to make a job change, helping them to identify target companies, interviewing success, which is interviewing skills training. And even after they receive an offer, we offer programs in salary negotiation and research to help them negotiate the best offer possible. From a coaching standpoint, we really try to meet the students where their need is. We can work with students more strategically in helping students actually develop a career strategy and plan and help them develop a process for actually implementing that plan. Some students don't need that. They're looking for just, help me update my resume, or help me really upgrade my LinkedIn profile, or I've got an interview coming up and can you help me prepare for that interview or do a mock interview. And so as career coaches, we kind of swing from one area to another and try to meet the student's need wherever that need is. The last thing I mentioned was connections, and connections is all about programs and opportunities for students to build their professional networks. And these are everything from career fairs, where we bring companies, usually 10 to 15 companies on campus for hiring events. There are also company presentations where companies come on campus for business meetings with networking opportunities following that. We have a number of times during the year where we bring alumni back, kind of on an executive and resident basis, where students can meet with alumni from different functions and industries and develop those relationships and build their contacts in those functions and industries. So there are a number of opportunities because networking is so important for students to build their network and learn how to leverage that network.
So Justin, you mentioned that you were actually looking to change functions or industries, and that's one of the reasons you decided to pursue an Executive MBA. Talk to me about what your interactions were like with your career coach and how your career coach helped you make that pivot.
Sure. So as Bob talked about, I really took advantage of the full gamut. So the first week I would get to know Bob, build that relationship, told him about my goals. I came from the logistics and transportation space, working there for over 8 years, with 3 of them being overseas in Asia. So I really wanted to continue to be in a multinational corporation where there was a lot of diversity, there was a lot of different options available, and to leverage my experience, but be able to do something in a different industry, be consulting is what I'm going into. So from the beginning, I told Bob my career goals. Really, I'm about structure, and that's the great thing about the CMC, as Ed talked about as well. It's very structured. So, depending on if you're unstructured and not structured, it is, what you want of it. But having a structured personality, Bob helped me with my resume from the beginning, target companies, going to the alumni database. I reached out and seeked, people that were in those industries and talk to them on an informational basis, getting to know is this really what I want to do? Like, is this something that I could be, you know, good at, or is this something I want to challenge myself in? So really taking advantage of those, as well as doing, you know, the networking events. I tried to attend as many as possible. They're typically either in the evenings or on the weekend. So typically with the class, they correspond. So that's something that you can take advantage of when you're here. So getting to know people in those industries as well really helped me. And then when I got to the stage where I was starting to interview, Bob helped me with, you know, mock interviews, as he talked about. And I took, you know, really advantage of that, working with him as well as some of his other colleagues to get different, you know, results to see, you know, from Bob's perspective. He took it that I said it this way, my body language was this way from another. So you can work with Bob, you can work with some of his other colleagues, you can work with everybody. It's really just what you make of it. So doing that, it really helped me. And then also taking advantage of what they call ACT, it's the Active Career Transition, or the on-campus recruiting. So those are a formalized process within the structure, which maybe we can go into later.
Sure.
And I took advantage of those as well. And then going into that, I was able to successfully find an opportunity that I really enjoyed with TCS.
That's terrific. Yeah, so it sounds like you really were able to leverage Bob's expertise in the Career Management Center to kind of get that exposure to the new industry that you were looking for, and kind of help solidify your career plans.
Yes, exactly.
That's awesome. Ed, so your career path was a little different. You weren't looking for a huge industry change necessarily, but really more an expansion of functional skills and leadership abilities. How did you work with Bob and the CMC to explore new opportunities on your career path?
Yeah, I think for me, and I always come back to the same idea of tools, and to go back to what Bob walked us through, I think of the content that the CMC provides, you know, kind of interwoven through your other coursework is really providing the tools of how one establishes and manages your personal brand, right? And how do you do those things? I think of the networking events and these where they bring companies in and different people. That to me is establishing a playing field, right? So it's a place for me to apply those tools at real time in a relatively safe environment, right? So in most, if not all of those interactions, somebody like Bob or somebody from the CMC would be there. But as the student, it's my job, and I think Justin hit on this some, to avail myself of those opportunities, right? So the CMC puts the tools out with the content, they establish this playing field and all these networking opportunities, and then I think really what Justin was saying, I, at some point as a student, had to get up and begin to use those tools, and that's where the CMC walked right beside me. I was a student who, again, as I entered into the program, I felt very strongly that I would exit into the management consulting career field. Not an unusual exit for many MBA students, be it executive or the other formats. In the end, I made a return back to corporate America. And when I think about the CMC, as we moved through, I was in a process where there was two offers, and we were kind of going along, one consulting and one in the corporate space. Having somebody, you know, and in this case it was Bob from the CMC, you know, he's observing verbal, nonverbal. Am I congruent in the things that I'm saying? And when it really came down to it, I remember I was very fortunate to land a role with Intercontinental Hotels Group, and Bob said in the end, I think that was the right decision. I remember him saying that very clearly, but he said it after I chose. And I think that's where they're there with you through the whole process. Interviewing and salary negotiations is a very asymmetric process from an information perspective. Having the CMC there was like having my own, and having Bob there with me through that process it was totally different than any other process, and it's such an invaluable help to have really a professional services. You have your coach is right there with you, and saying, well, Bob, they came back with this. All right, Ed, here's what you need to do. Here's what you need to consider. And it was a very different experience, and I enjoyed it much more than previous job search and negotiations that I'd done.
Sounds like you really had a built-in support system every step of the way.
Very much. That's a good way. He probably might want to stop answering the phone for me, but yeah.
Well, you both talked about how much you've leveraged not only the CMC, but your career coach specifically, and Bob. specifically, how often did you have meetings, or even if it was regular contact, where you're maybe as you were prepping or when you were in the negotiation process? What was the timing like? Is it a weekly thing? Is it a daily thing? Is it a monthly thing? And I know it varies student to student, but I'd love to hear from each of you.
Yeah, maybe I'll take that one first. I think, one, the proximity, Bob and co. So you think the entire CMC office, they're physically like, I don't know, 50 yards from us right now, and it's actually down, so probably not even that far. They're always here and available. So I call there's those water cooler conversations where, I would bump into Bob and immediately he was engaged. Hey, what's going on? And have you talked to so-and-so? And that's that water cooler type. But then I think from a frequency perspective, I was one of the first people within my cohort to make a career transition. So the program for modular is, at the time, I think it's still 2 years long. So right about halfway through, about 12 or so months in is when I made that move. So the frequency of those meetings, it increased, but I was one of those people I felt very strongly to achieve the return on investment from time and the cost. Being away from my family, all those kind of things, I wanted to, as quickly as possible, begin to execute upon a career transition. So I think, with Bob, we met fairly often, and again, from an availability perspective, I never remember occasion where we had any issue scheduling, a time. And again, the flexibility of, is it going to be a phone call? Is it going to be in person? Is it going to be, hey, I'm finishing up something here, just swing by afterwards. And that flexibility was very, because like many of you and just like us, we're working professionals, and having that flexibility was very impactful for how much I could actually leverage the services of the CMC.
Yes, and like Ed mentioned, I also took advantage of Bob and his colleagues being here, and I don't know if it was weekly or monthly, but I did take advantage of it quite frequently, because I would see Bob as well as his colleagues for the weekend program. You meet alternating weekends, so it'd be either the first and third, second and fourth, etc. So if I wasn't doing something with my resume or doing something with my target list, etc., when I was having class, I would see them either during the lunchtime, or they would come in and check up with my classmates and me to see how I was doing. And as the curriculum progressed and the different programs started, that was when I started really reaching out to Bob and saying, I really want to get toned up with my mock interview skills, the STAR method, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And even there was one instance where I had an interview that was it was spare of the moment. It came in, middle of the afternoon. I said, I need to do this tomorrow. And I reached out to Bob, and he said, okay, I can make it happen. So we talked with him that day. He got me ready, and it was able to go successful, and I did well in that interview. So the CMC is available for you. It's, as Ed and I mentioned, you have to really reach out to them, and the earlier you reach out to them, the better off you're going to be.
I think that's a great point. It's all about reaching out to them and starting that early. And Ed, you touched on that as well, about you weren't wanting to wait until the program was over. And I think we see evidence of that a lot with our Executive MBA students, that throughout the program, whether it's after the first semester or halfway through, we're seeing them get promoted within their companies. We're seeing them start to make some of those career shifts. Bob, can you elaborate a little bit more on that? What are the impacts that an MBA can have on someone's career?
Yeah. Well, I think that can best be summed up simply in competitive advantage. If you are looking to grow your career with your current company or in your current function, I think your MBA gives you the opportunity to really build on your operations and execution-based skills and background, with really building additional business acumen and strategy perspectives. And that can only make you more marketable within your company and function. It can only make you more marketable in terms of advancement potential. We have other students who are looking at making a change, and that change could be a functional change or an industry change. And when you're looking at that type of a move, competitive advantage translates directly to transferable skills. What are the transferable skills that you have or you can build that will increase your marketability to that new function or industry you're trying to get to? And I think the MBA helps you do that, whether it be skills in marketing or finance or operations or even consulting. I think that you can, your MBA not only allows you to build those skills, but to leverage those skills to increase your marketability for the move you're looking to make.
Mm-hmm. Justin, you made that career pivot to a new industry, and I know we've talked a lot about the career services that you received to help you make that transition. Would you mind talking about the MBA program itself and some of the skills you picked up and new knowledge that you picked up that maybe helped solidify that decision and make you feel more comfortable doing that industry shift?
Sure. So from the very beginning there, working with CMC, working with outside individuals that CMC brings in as well as part of our curriculum, I really learned and reflected on, interpersonality, being able to, conflict styles, that different kinds of things, different communication styles, outside of the general finance, marketing, operations, strategy. So that really helped me to understand, better of who I was and knowing, the different things that I've experienced in my, growth opportunity. Going into consulting, you have to be able to, work with different individuals, different places, be very flexible, and really seeing that and working with my classmates, because the WIMBA as well as the modular program is very diverse from many different industries, many different perspectives, as well as from countries all over the world. So I got to be able to really put that into play up front in a safe environment, as Ed was talking about, to really show that that was something that I could do in a consulting environment, working with people from all over the world. Even though I had experience in that, it was just in a certain region. I wanted to be able to broaden that out in many different industries.
Ed, so you made a company shift, not necessarily a huge functional role shift, but you were talking about how you were really looking to expand those leadership skills. Do you want to talk a little bit about how the program helped you develop in that area?
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, my career brand prior to coming to Goizueta is I was a subject matter expert, which that's great as long as people are willing to pay for that subject and knowledge on that subject. So again, that was a big driver for me to come into the program. But I'm an airplane guy by trade, so I think about altitude. And from a subject matter expert perspective, my view of business was very much capped off at I'd say about 50,000 feet. That's how I looked at things. I knew about this certain slice of business, but I was not at the table when the decision was like, what are we going to do for the next 1, 3, 5 years? What is our vision as a company, and how are we going to execute? What are the initiatives that it takes to achieve that vision, and so on. And I had a feeling that I was aware I didn't know those things, and I knew there was a table where they were being discussed, and I wanted a seat at that table. So again, when I look at the MBA, and it's just as Justin walked us through the particular topics, as a leader, I need to be able to consider and think about above 50,000 feet. Get my thinking up to, do I need to be an expert at finance? No, I don't. But I need to understand, as I pull finance levers and I do different things inside the business, what is that impact? If I'm trying to choose between options inside a company to achieve my vision, understanding and be able to prioritize and rank those options is a critical skill for a leader. In most corporate America, in the corporate world, we're not lacking most cases for good ideas. We have plenty of good ideas. It's which are the ones that are we going to put through. We're limited on throughput, time, money, people, and as leaders, that's our role, is to be able to use our skills, our abilities as leaders to choose what are the good ideas that we're going to move forward, and how does that help us achieve our vision. And to me, that is what the MBA did for me, and able to pull all of that together. And really, kind of my last thought about me specifically is I did move into, I stayed within product management. My background is really around product management in the airline space. But my current role in corporate strategy, I will say there would be no way I would have that role today if it was for not having not only the MBA credential, and I have earned that, but really at Emory. It's something where there would have been no scenario where I would have been able to execute that career transition. Yes, part of that is on me, but I think a huge, to Emory for how they equipped me from the content perspective. But one thing Bob told me one time, as a leader, I need to be able to communicate three things very crisply. What are my business results and how do I quantify those? How am I doing it different? How am I being an innovator? And how am I a leader? And be able to articulate those things to people and understand and be able to describe how I can transfer that into a new area. And in my case, it's corporate strategy. And I was able to execute that move from the coursework provided here and then the tools that the CMC equipped me with. So Bob, thanks for that very much.
Hey, you're welcome.
That's got to be pretty satisfying.
Yeah.
I don't know how many of us get to thank you on a regular basis. That's terrific insight from both of you. I really appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and transition topics a little bit here. I'd like to talk a little bit about the diversity in the classroom, and that then obviously permeates throughout our alumni network, and how students can get access to or leverage that alumni network. Bob?
Well, I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think networking is key for leveraging your career, however you choose to leverage it. And generally, my recommendation on getting in touch with alumni, and as we talked earlier, we have a very engaged alumni group, as evidenced by Justin and Ed being here with us today. I first recommend that if you're reaching out to alumni, the best way to do that is through LinkedIn. We have contacts, we have connections, and those contacts or connections are the easiest way to at least make an initial contact with an alum or anybody, functionally or industry-wise that you're trying to reach out to. In addition to that, we have a couple of different resources to help in that regard. One is the Goizueta Alumni Directory, which all our students have access to. And that generally has all Goizueta alums reaching back to a number of years, a number of decades, in fact, their contact information about them. And it's a good way to get that contact information for reach out purposes. The alumni group has also just come out with a program called Emory Connects. And Emory Connects is again kind of building off an alumni directory, but it hooks in to your LinkedIn directory and your personal LinkedIn, and gives you the opportunity, if you're doing a company search or industry search, to identify specific alum who have basically raised their hands and volunteered to be company champions and individuals who are willing to talk to you and give you advice about the company and potential job opportunities with that company. And last but certainly not least, as career coaches, we tend to have pretty broad networks within the alumni group and with companies and in various functions and industries. And we are always available to share our contacts and connections with alums and just other contacts we have that we think may be helpful for students to be in touch with.
Mm-hmm. Both of you have touched on the importance of networking as you talked about how you were planning out your career paths and making those transitions. Can you talk a little bit about the different types of networking events that you attended, some of those alumni connections that you've made and were able to leverage?
Sure. So there's various networking events, as Bob and Ed and I have already talked about. And really what they detail from is it can either be Emory sponsored, which is, it means where Emory and Goizueta Business School bring in multiple, I don't know the exact number, but it's a lot of different companies from not only in Atlanta, but all over the U.S. And really you're able to spend the day with them and go around and talk with each of the different companies to really, say, hi, I'm Justin Hamlet, I'm graduating in 2018, I do this, I'm currently interested in your company, can you really talk to me about, what's going on with it there, as well as a lot of alums really are generous in wanting to put on their own events, and they put them on. If it's Home Depot, they put it on near Home Depot. If it's Delta, attended one with Delta near the airport, or ISG. All the different companies around Atlanta are really, their alums are really generous, and they put on their own specific events. So you can reach out if you're within that proximity or interested in that company, as well as through ACT and OCR, which I mentioned earlier. That's a more formal process where there's different companies that you can apply to through the process that you go through, and they will come to campus and you can meet with them either in the evening, or there's summer networking where all of them come together and you're able to be one-on-one. It's more of it's a very small environment, so it could be 10 of you in there with 3 or 4 individuals from the company, or it could be numerous individuals from the company as well as numerous students. And that way you get more of a one-on-one thing, and you're able to introduce yourself if you're wanting to apply for a specific role. So there are various networking opportunities that you can take advantage of.
That's great. So Justin mentioned ACT and OCR. Bob, do you want to elaborate on those for our audience who might not be familiar with our acronyms?
Sure. For Executive MBA students, the Career Management Center offers 2 programs for students who are in some phase of job search. One of those programs is on-campus recruiting, which is OCR. OCR is a very structured program. It is available to Executive MBA students one time and one time only, and it's available the year before they graduate. And it's basically about a 9-month process. It starts in February, carries through the spring and summer with professional development, with specific coaching, with networking events. And OCR is a process where companies actually come on campus to recruit Emory MBAs. And generally for executive MBAs, the type of opportunities that OCR would be appropriate for is executive MBAs who are looking to make a major career pivot. And as Justin said, he was one of those individuals. It also offers students who are primarily interested in consulting, probably the greatest visibility to consulting companies and to multiple consulting companies who are looking for hiring. There are also opportunities in marketing and finance. However, these tend to be entry-level positions for primarily people with 3 to 5 years of corporate experience. Advanced Career Transitions, which is ACT. This is a sister program to on-campus recruiting. It starts every February and just continually runs literally through graduation. And ACT is primarily oriented for experienced hire, just-in-time opportunities that come up. Companies generally do not come on campus recruiting for more experienced hire opportunities. Those opportunities are available through networking, through sometimes job boards, through sometimes executive recruiters. And so as coaches, we work with the students in really helping them to understand their personal brand, make sure their personal brand is being demonstrated through their resume and LinkedIn, helping them with preparing for interviews so they can leverage those type of opportunities.
I think it's worth noting that OCR and ACT are the structured programs that have a defined start period, but all the other access and services that we've been talking about, your career coach, these networking opportunities, access to our alumni services, our alumni network, that happens from day one. So the moment you step foot onto campus, or really the moment that you decide you're coming to Emory, all that begins. So I think we're getting low on time, so I want to just kind of wrap it up with a question really about the diversity of the professional experiences of your classmates and how you were able maybe to expand your network among your cohort, and if you've seen any opportunities maybe for future opportunities for leveraging them for career advancement or partnerships.
You want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, so in my cohort, I think we had like 28 or so folks and some really sharp people. I always joke, I'm not sure how I got accepted, but medical doctors, PhDs, and different people. And I think through the program, one thing that organically comes up is through some of the initiatives. You're like, wow, we work well together. I think from a team building perspective, it's amazing the amount that the way the cohorts pull together. So I think naturally it comes out of that. For many of us, we maintain connections post graduation, either for this to kind of work on an idea that the original thought came up during our time at Goizueta, or we'll kind of flip, if you will, business to each other and say, hey, look, I have a friend who has a particular skill or passion in this particular area. Like in my case, during the coursework at Emory, I became very interested in the private equity space. In finance, I have zero background from a professional perspective. I have a great deal of academic experience there, and through connections within my cohort, I was able to do, and I still do, a small amount of side work in the private equity space. It only occurred, again, and I'm being very absolute here, it only occurred because I had a classmate who had been in finance for many, many, many years, who personally vouched for me, and it was only because based on the time that we were together. So it can open doors through the connections that we made, or that I made inside my cohort.
I think also to add to Ed's point, from the very beginning, in the first month, there's this leadership training. So there's 5 different terms. In the first 3, you'll be assigned different teams. So being along with my curriculum, we had a class of servicemen, healthcare, transportation, nonprofit, all over. So really working with individuals from different countries all over the world, working with these individuals, going to this leadership training. It was in Fort Benning. You're really able to start from day one to really get a relationship. If I was on the team with Ed, how does Ed react to stress? How does Ed communicate under pressure or communicate day to day? So you really get used to working with different individuals, because everybody's a working individual. And you're going to have team-based assignments within the curriculum, so you have to really understand how to work with people even outside of your own work to get things done. So really building that, as well as there's a curriculum where you go to different country. We went to South America and Argentina as well as Chile. So you really bond that way as well, because you're gone for a length of time. You have a team-based assignment there. You're in a different environment with people, and you're really getting to know each other. So that diversity within a new culture is on top of that. So there's really a lot of different angles that you're able to build on from different industries. And just graduating, I haven't been able to leverage my network as much as Ed, but I still keep up with them to this day. We built a WhatsApp group or a communication group where we talk. If someone's had a birthday or had a birth of a child, we send out congratulatories or wanting to meet up on the weekend, that kind of thing. So we still are very closely bonded within 60 individuals that were in my curriculum.
That's terrific. Sounds like a lot of opportunities there just to create that bond, create a really tight network with your cohort and your classmates, that whether it's just friendships or turns into future professional opportunities.
Yeah.
That's terrific.
Nicole, one thing I'd like to say is, and particularly to our audience, we started off this webcast talking about the importance of career. And while you're here at Goizueta, you're literally going to be working 4 full-time jobs. You obviously have your corporate job, the job you go to each day. Being a student here is another full-time job. You have a full-time personal and family life, and if you are managing your career, if you are really taking the actions you need to advance your career, that's another full-time job. So with 4 full-time jobs, you need to be efficient, you need to be effective. Justin and Ed were extremely effective. They were effective at using the resources of the Career Management Center to really manage their career. And several things that both of these guys did. One, they both engaged with the CMC early, and that's important. If they know us, then we know them. We know where they're trying to take their career. We know what their background is, what their skills is, what their experience is, and the options available to them. So engage early with the Career Management Center. Develop a relationship with the coaches there. Like I said, we can't help you unless we really know about you and the way you want to move forward in your career. And I think they both did a super job of really using and leveraging the resources that the Career Management Center has available. We're not recruiters. We're not going to chase you down. And so the responsibility is yours to access those resources and support. And I think the most important thing that these gentlemen did is through their relationships they built within their class, the relationships they built with the Career Management Center, the relationships with professors, they came out of that with really a career action plan. And I think the most important thing that these guys did in leveraging their success is they executed on that plan. They took the time, they came up with the energy and effectiveness to do the things that were necessary to move their career forward, and they absolutely did that, and that's why they're sitting here today.
Well, I appreciate them sitting here today. You as well, Bob. You all really shared some insightful perspectives that I think will help our prospective students in the audience really figure out if Goizueta is the right place for them, is an executive MBA the right path for them. So thank you for your time today. With that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. As I mentioned before, we'll send you an email within a week. It will have the video of this web chat. It will also include the links to the slides that we showed here today. Up on the screen, I just want to mention we have a few upcoming events and deadlines. The next application deadline for our Executive MBA programs, whether you're looking at our weekend Executive MBA or a modular Executive MBA, is July 1st. We also have two upcoming MBA information sessions. One is in person, that's on July 10th, and then we have an online session on July 18th. And then just to let you all know, August 10th is the final application deadline. So if you haven't started that app, now's the time to get that moving and in process. So thank you again for your time today, everyone, and have a great afternoon.